What's up, everybody? It's your boy Cool Ty coming at you one more time, one more again. I want to thank you guys for joining me. Please remember, as we go through this journey, to like, share, subscribe to the channel, and I would appreciate that greatly. There is a great deal of crazy things going on now in the comic book industry, which actually ties into what's going on in our current society. For the last year or two, people have been talking about woke comics and who's part of the MAGA cult and who's not, and what do you stand for? Do you stand for equal rights for all? Do you stand for, is the Constitution meant for all? All of these things are now sifting through and playing out within the stories and the artwork of this amazing hobby we call comic book collecting. I actually love all of this stuff happening because it opens up the door to have a lot of really good conversations. Are comics woke? Is that a brand new phenomenon? Does the DC blackout or the DC boycott actually have to happen? Is there an alternative to it? And what can we do to help this process? We're going to answer all of these questions, and we're going to talk about all of these things as we move through our time today. Again, I want to thank you for joining me. I also want to let you know there are more great interviews on the way. So please stay tuned, like, share, subscribe, and smash that notification button. So first, let's talk about the current DC boycott. Is this something that's necessary? And is this something that people should participate in? I actually fall on the side of a little bit of both, but more so on the side of it's probably not necessary. For me, as a big DC fan, I'm Image, I am DC. Marvel is third because I got all, maybe third or fourth because I have all the other indie titles that I really enjoy. But for me, we have gotten to a point to where there is so much indie, fabulous, amazing creativity going on that we can scratch our comic book itch. We can scratch our buying great stories that represent people elsewhere. We don't actually need to go to Marvel and DC and the other major companies or the other minor companies to get that fix, especially when it comes to art and creativity. However, I do want to say I understand why we need to be in those spaces. If we go all the way back to the word representation, if we go back to, we can go back to slavery, what was being represented by the enslaved population, or how were the enslaved population being represented by the enslaving class? Go back to the story or the movie Birth of a Nation. The representation was evil, it was vile, it was nasty. We know it was wrong. And that evil, nasty, vile representation actually created murder, death, manipulation, rape on many, many levels. So we know that in order for the true, real story to be told, that representation needs to be accurate and it needs to be plentiful, right? So if we take a look, not just Birth of a Nation, right? But if we also take a look at some other very important stories that have come up, for example, the 688, right? For me, I'd never heard of the story. So therefore, when Tyler Perry and his creative team got together to tell this story, it shined the light more on true, real American history. Think about what we knew before this. We've known for decades how African Americans and the descendants of Africans have fought within the American military to gain equal rights, equal protection of the law, citizenship. Even here now in America, we allow others, foreigners, who wish to get citizenship, they must serve within the American military, and that's a fast path to citizenship. That's currently still on the books, and that is currently still happening. Think about the other things that we would have missed if the representation were not there. And that's actually our words for today. Kind of like Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, right? Representation. Can you imagine every single superhero being blonde, blue-eyed, and white? Can you imagine every heroine being scantily clad as if she's a stripper or a streetwalker or whatever those words are, right? Always giving the view of this is a sex worker. Can you imagine if those were the only representations out there? Well, there actually was a time before what we have now, as that was the only representation there because of that unwritten rule. And that unwritten rule said no to African American characters, period. Or, hey, we can't have too many. Those are just a few reasons why it is imperative that we create the space in all aspects of American society that show the true and the honest and the real historical representation of its citizens. And right now, we're talking about African American citizens. We cannot afford the time to play the games to give us what they gave us in the past, right? We are not looking at being represented only as one particular thing, because that destroys the narrative, unfortunately, in reality. We can also talk about the Statue of Liberty Division, which is the 77th Division, which came out of New York, which was a group of military who represented all walks of life. Their story was told in a Sergeant Rock story called The Lost Battalion, and it told about this group of multicultural American citizens going in to save an all-white regiment from nearly being destroyed. Can you imagine not knowing that and only thinking that it was only the white guys who were out fighting in the military? Can you imagine not knowing the Tuskegee Airmen? These are the times when we look at people who are fighting against this historical account and ask, are you really an American citizen? Or are you just wanting to be the ruling class and only tell one narrative and one side of the story? And that is truly what we're battling. People wanting to only tell one side of the story. So why do we need to have more African American characters at DC, at Marvel, at Image, at Dark Horse, at Valiant, at every single company? Why do we need to have this particular question answered? And why do we need to have this representation? If you do not tell the correct historical account to the people reading the books, what ends up happening is we forget to even think about what could happen in a different way or what could happen on the flip side. We know there's a comic book, and this story talks about Black people in space. It was never heard of. Why would there be Black people in space? That actually was the thinking, because no one ever showed it. And when William Shatner and his character on Star Trek kissed Uhura, Nichelle Nichols, who was a Black woman, even having her on the show was a problem. But having this interaction where a white person is kissing a gorgeous, beautiful, highly talented Black woman created an uproar. Can you imagine if they succumbed and said, we're not going to run that episode. Also, we're not going to put her in it because Black people don't really go to space. Can you imagine that? So when you're talking about why are people fighting so hard for this boycotting? Why are people wanting these Black characters and writers and artists and colorists and letterers and publishers? Why do people fight so hard for this particular thing? It's because we are the fabric of America. Our people built this country. Our people's blood is in the soil. And our people keep this country moving forward in every aspect of life. And when there is a willful, concerted effort to destroy that narrative, everyone should be up in arms, not just African Americans, not just Latinos and Black and brown skinned people, but every single group, including women. Including women. If we were to go back and think about some of the stories that could have happened, Tony Isabella, the creator of Black Lightning, told us a story about when he came over to DC and they wanted him to do this horrible, racist Black bomber character. He said no, because it's evil and it's racist and it's not how Black people are. Charles Schulz, when he created his character, right here on the shirt, big ups to Black Comic Lords, my boy Jay, Willie Corday, and everybody involved. When Charles Schulz created the character, they said, hey, here in the South, we don't want to see that Black character, that Black boy playing with those white kids. And Charles Schulz made a stance. You will print it as I give it to you, or you won't print it at all. And of course, we all know they ended up printing it, and Charles Schulz ended up being an American icon. Maury Turner, with his group, with his cartoon, We Pals, which became a TV show. Can you imagine if this Black creator, Maury Turner, who was a syndicated cartoonist across the nation, actually decided, well, hey, you know, they're telling me to go create something different, or they're telling me I can't do this, so I got to create something all white. Can you imagine what we would have missed out on by not having those representations within the community, within the entire nation? Think about the number of cartoonists who were inspired by Maury Turner. Think about the number of artists, writers, including myself, who have been inspired by our forefathers in every genre, whether it's sports, communications, art, writing, engineering, medicine, research, technology. If we didn't have those great and inspiring representations, it would have diminished everybody else from thinking that they can reach those heights. We all know the story of Greenwood. And Greenwood was a city like many other hundreds of cities where Black people thrived. And because through the adversity and because through all the evil and the negativity that group of people went through, to be successful, jealousy creeped in. And again, like many, and I can't say all, even though my mouth was about to say all, and I can't say all, but like many white, male, fake Christians in America, they committed murder. They bombed the town, they destroyed the city, they killed people, all because even through the adversity and the evil, vile treatment that those white male American Christians put on Black people during that time, prosperity is always in our sights, and we always reach it. Greenwood is only one. Rosewood, I'm from Florida. Rosewood, a great comedian and host, Amber Ruffin, did an amazing story on where these Black towns are and what happened to them. Seneca Village up in New York is another one. Many of these Black towns were flooded or simply destroyed. Why would American citizens destroy other American citizens? That's the question you should ask yourself. Not what color their skin, not what religion they are or what religion they worship, excuse me. Why are these American citizens not being given equal right and equal treatment under the law per the Constitution? We already know the Constitution originally wasn't written with us in mind because they were thinking, well, there'll always be slavery. The good part about it is we were able to fight to kill it and destroy it with our allies, the abolitionists. All of this is tied into comics. Trust me, this is all tied into comics. I want to go back to a comment that I made previously about the unwritten rule. There's always been an unwritten rule that you don't create Black characters because Black characters don't sell. We can go all the way back to Little 8-Ball, created by Walter Lantz, along with Woody Woodpecker and Andy Panda and Raggedy Ann and Andy. He created this racist little monkey-looking African-American kid who talked like an enslaved person because, of course, he wasn't educated, because, of course, white American Christian males made rules that you couldn't educate them. I wonder why. Have you ever asked yourself why they would not allow an entire group of American citizens, or before they were citizens, an entire group of human beings, denied them the right to read and write and learn? That should be your answer. Literally, that's my answer to everything. Because they did that, we need to always do the opposite. But I want you to think about these unwritten rules. I remember I started collecting the little 8-Ball characters and famous funnies and new funnies, excuse me, years ago. Took me a few years. I think I got almost all of them. But what I noticed as I started to attempt to find where this art was, because I also wanted to purchase some of the art. And this is during the time the art was being incinerated. Well, the story goes, as I heard it through the grapevine, so don't hold me to it if I make a mistake, that once the times began to change, the artwork was 100% incinerated because it was so evil, nasty, and racist. They had no choice but to destroy it because it represented a false narrative. We can tie this in to our current situation here in Virginia. We had a governor's race. For the first time, two women, an African-American woman and a white woman, American, ran for this race. And there were people who actually thought, without knowing anything about how people vote, that everybody was going to automatically vote, all Black people were going to automatically vote for the Black woman. They attempted to use reverse psychology. Well, didn't you just vote for Barack Obama because he was Black? No. Don't you just always vote for the Black person? No. I even had a person, a Republican, a MAGA cult member, tell me, wow, this is going to be an interesting race because of the Black woman. No, it's not. We don't just vote for any Black person. If so, the 4 Black men who left Congress in the South, they wouldn't have just walked away. You would have think that they would have our vote, but they know they don't have our vote. They know they don't have our confidence because they don't actually have our backs. There was no reason for us to vote for the Black woman here in Virginia because she was not on our side. She has never been on our side like the other Black conservative Christian Republic, or actually I shouldn't say call them Republican, conservative Christian MAGA cult members. And let's talk about this word conservative Christian. You can't be both. A conservative and a conservative is a political party. There is no conservative Christian. A Christian will dump the political party to believe what they're being told by the Messiah. They're not going to listen to the political party during a time of worship. So even having this saying conservative Christian is a lie. Christians follow love above all else. They put love at the top above all else. not what can we get out of this to help our people. They put Jesus's example and all the prophets, peace and blessings to them, and all the prophets of the Bible above their political views. Christian conservatives or conservative Christians or whatever, they put the political party over the religion, which is why I say they are actually fake Christians. If we just went along to get along, oh, let's just do that because that's what everybody's doing, we would have a very boring, a very mediocre society. The reason why we go for the best person, the reason why so many groups in America fight for that representation, fight for the right representation in the right direction with the right narrative, is because we make up the fabric of the nation. So, what is it that we want? And this is the perfect example. What is it that we want? We actually want the right to be represented the correct way. We actually want, in many cases, what we have already worked for, what we have already fought and won for in the streets, in the courts, in the voting booth. We want the right to participate in all of these aspects of life because that is the American way. We don't want a handout. We are not the victims. We want and require and demand, if we're going to write about a character, let that character have some honest to goodness, truthful narrative to that character. I remember there was a time where there was a bunch of doctors making rules about women's health with no women doctors. There was a group of people, a group of men making rules about women's health, but there were no women. How does this tie in to our current topic of DC and the boycott? Well, we want Black characters. We also want Black creators, Black writers, Black letterers, Black editors. We also want them in that exact same space, doing the job that they are 100% capable of and have, in most cases, educated themselves, graduated, and have higher degrees than many other people. We want them in those spaces to tell their stories because they're stories that they can tell that somebody else can't tell. How many times back in the 60s and the 70s were the main comic book titles using horrible names to represent and to address African American people? How many times had books needed to be recalled? How many times did books not age well because of the way the narrative towards an entire group or towards women was originally portrayed? Those things don't work because we're smarter. We used to think the earth was the center of the universe. Wrong. We used to think the sun rotated around the earth. Wrong. And each year we got smarter and smarter, which meant we had to change what was said in the past. We know the earth is round. We know we actually went to the moon. Those things, historically, intelligent, logical people don't debate because we know debating those things takes away the validity of the historical account. And that's what we fight against. Listen, long before DC had this many Black characters, it was all white characters. And Black kids were still buying, and adults were still buying DC comic books. But as DC got older, and as DC got smarter, and as society and the world changed, and as more and more people became educated or more educated, DC, like all the other companies, had to realize this does not fly anymore. And that is why people are upset in arms about DC with all the amazing characters that they have. Why haven't they just done more or done better? Even with DC New 52, we had Mr. Terrific, we had Static, we had Cyborg, even with the DC New 52. And now, with this new company-wide crossover that they're doing, where are the characters? And maybe the idea is just wait and see. People are frustrated with waiting. We have favorite characters. Now, for me, I've always been in this arena where my characters don't last. The comic books that I like don't last, whether that's Milestone, right? Hawkman, Shazam, come and go and come and go. It was great for me to see Hawkman and Aquaman and Shazam and Vixen, Cyborg. It was great for me to see these characters in comics. It was great for me to see these characters on the big screen, because what it did is it brought validity to them. It brought another realm. It brought another, not realm. It brought another group of people who are interested in these characters. And it brought them more money. It allowed more books to be published. It allowed more people to come into the hobby. So in every form, creating this diversity. And let's stop calling DEI let's stop making it a dog whistle. Let's stop doing that. We know the biggest people, or the biggest group that gain from DEI are white women, because their husbands put their companies in their name, and the women get the loans and the grants and all of these things. It's diversity. It's why we are great. The reason why we want these things is because we want the right narrative to be shown. We want diversity. We don't want to see the same. Listen, I walk into Artist Alley and Independent Press at cons as I go from different cons across the country. And when I go into Artist Alley, there was a time I would go into Independent, go to the indie area, and I would just walk by and go, it's the same thing, man. A white character, blonde hair, blue eyed, muscular Superman, a white character, blonde hair, blue eyed, over and over. And I'm just like, there's got to be something better. And there was, right next to the other characters, and the characters were there. We want a diverse, a true representation of what America is. When people talk about the Republican, the Democratic Party, they go, oh, they're the same. No, they're not. That's just a lie. And if anybody tells you that your vote doesn't count, they're also lying. Tell them to see me. Hit me up at Comic Book Hit List. I would love to have a conversation with them. They're not the same. Put the pictures of each party next to each other and tell me if they're the same. Take a group of Republican, MAGA, cult senators and congressmen and put them next to Democratic senators and congressmen and tell me again, which group would you feel comfortable in? Which group do you feel would actually tell the real story? It definitely won't be the Republicans, because that is a homogeneous group of closeted people who only want it one particular way. Please, 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 again, we're not asking for the moon. We're asking, that is the bare minimum to have characters that are African-American, male and female, that are successful on a monthly title. We know Static Shock worked. I'm sorry. We know Static worked because then we had Static Shock. Static Shock, the TV series, won a ton of awards. Joe Ilyich had everybody going out buying the new history of the DC. So we know the buying power is there. We even had a second print of that. So we know the money and the interest is there. So what are we waiting on? We couldn't have done this, and I get it. People are thinking, well, why wasn't this done already? We know how companies work. There's a timeline. There are meetings, there's this, there's that. But that's what we're asking for. We're asking for, hey, wait a minute. You have characters that can sell. Cyborg, how many titles does that have? Didn't you give up on it? The New Power Company, that was a great first issue, and then you gave up on it, right? But how many of these other comic book titles that just keep running and running and running, and it's just like, really, why? You're just making kindling for the, excuse me, you're making kindling for the fire. The story has no substance. The story has not gained more in sales, but they just keep pumping it out. And all we're saying is, so those stories that keep falling to the bottom of the barrel, why don't we replace those characters with characters an entire group of people are saying they want? And that's not just Black people. So if you just take the bottom 5 lowest selling titles in DC, just scrap them. They've probably already had runs of 100, 200, 300. They've already probably had runs in the past because they just kept making them. Switch them out. Do the exact same thing. No matter what happens, you just keep pumping out and selling. You keep pumping out that title every month. You keep garnering new artists and new writers. You just keep letting it happen over and over until we get to about 200 issues. You keep going, and you will see the sales will probably be better. Even though I'm saying, hey, I know the sales can be better with many characters. Listen, if you don't think a Power Company title would work on a monthly basis, you're crazy. If you don't think an Icon title would work on a monthly basis, DC, you're crazy. They would. They absolutely positively would. If you don't think a Green Lantern, like Green Lantern War Journal, led by John Stewart, right? It sells well. But we know what's going to happen in the end. They'll cancel it to bring back Kyle or Hal or whatever the other character's name, you know. We know. You don't think that we want Green Lantern Joe in her own title, which is the absolute Green Lantern? We do. But we know Absolute Universe is going to end. And there's where the problem is. They keep ending. You know how many times Batman has started over? We don't want all those number ones. You know how many times Robin and Nightwing have started over? We don't want all the number ones. You know how many times Hawkman, Shazam, JSA, JLA, over and over, and hundreds of books start over again. Another hundreds of books start over again. The resources are there. The artists and the creators are already there. You already have a plan and a way of paying them. Why not just keep going? That's what we're asking. You're already doing something that's not performing well. There are a slew of DC titles that do not perform well. And yet you keep pumping out another 20, 30 issues. You keep pumping out another 20, 30 issues. But they're not doing well. They keep falling to the bottom. Now, I'm not going at the creators on these. It's just what people are interested in. Well, if you're creating a book that too many people aren't interested in after issue 3, that should tell you, wait a minute, maybe Joe Ilyich and these other creators are onto something. Maybe they're onto something. I can tell you, I would pre-order a book and all its variants if the book was decent. Not even great, decent. Not even spectacular, decent. Because this is what's going to happen. That book is going to come out. And as that book comes out, it's going to get people interested. Then it's going to inspire other people to write stories. And then those stories are going to be pitched to DC. And because that book was being sold, and because that book was on the shelf, and because that book was being put, DC, put money and time and energy, effort behind it, it will in turn inspire more people to write, which will give that book great characters and story arcs. And wonderful creative teams. That's kind of how it works. Something doesn't work anymore. We go, hey, let's switch up our creative team. Another team comes in and starts all over again. I've bought Nightwing probably since Chuck Dixon, and it's only gotten better and better. And they keep starting it over and starting it over and starting it over. You see my point? So there is time and there is space. But for some reason, DC just has decided we're not just going to do it right now. Their prerogative. We also know that through storytelling, we learn more. We've learned that certain stories in history have been buried or shunned. And through comics and through graphic novels, these stories have come out to tell greater stories. A lot of people hated the Captain Marvel movies. I have girls in my home, students, who love the Captain Marvel movies. They watch them repeatedly, which means the Captain Marvels might not be for the white male audience or even for black male audiences. Let's be very clear. It may not be for that audience. They might be focused in on a specific audience. Can you imagine someone saying, well, the biggest demographic that buys comics won't buy it, so let's not make it? How many Stephanie Williams are still out there to become? How many Afu Richardson, excuse me if I'm saying her name wrong, are still waiting to be created, who are out there in the trenches right now, creating their own independent creator-owned titles? How many Alethea Martinez artists are still out there? How many Anthony Ray Haight are still out there? How many little black boys and little black girls are still out there waiting for their shot? And when they see that character and that creative team, I can do it too. I remember one of the very first things that Chuck Patton and I talked about when we had our interview, and you can find his interview on my page. Please like, share, subscribe. You can find Chuck Patton's interview there. One of the things he said was, when you saw me, I shocked you, didn't you? I said, yeah. He said, because you didn't know I was black. I said, yeah, you're absolutely right. Because that representation is important. The people who are fighting against the representation, they are your enemies. The people who are fighting against representation, they are your enemies. Take away their representation. Make every character a black male. Watch how they get up in arms. Take away their representation. Don't put any female characters in the limelight. And even now, with the LGBTQ AI community, let's talk about how their representation was buried and killed and murdered. And now they're coming into their own. And I want to be clear, they are American citizens. And yet, fake Christian MAGA cult conservatives are doing everything in their power to destroy them. So let's tie all of this back into what we're talking about. Are comics really woke? And even though a bunch of evil people have perverted that word, we know it simply means diverse. It simply means telling a narrative of a history that a group of people, white Christians, wanted to hide because of how evil their ancestors were. A diverse comic book community will go out and purchase books that make them feel good, that they see themselves in. stories that they like. We know the amount of money they put behind Batman and Superman and Wonder Woman. They always have great artists, great writers. We're always going to patronize them for those titles, which opens the door up to, let's do the same thing to other characters. When these stories come out, and we have these different groups of creators telling these stories, they oftentimes enlighten us of history that we didn't know. Think of the movie Killers of the Flower Moon. Now, I had no knowledge of this, kind of like the 6888. I had no knowledge of this, even though I teach history. And I had no idea. But you know what? It tracks. When I realized that Killers of the Flower Moon actually told a true story of a Native American group whose land had oil on it, and how once again, the white male Christians attempted to murder, abuse, rape, and destroy an entire group of brown-skinned American citizens. You see how they, American citizens again, they drop bombs on the Native Americans. They also drop bomb on the Move 9 as well. We also know that indie comics are great. They're great. They're wonderful. But nothing will beat a Miles Morales. Nothing will beat a Queen Nubia. Nothing will beat, or can compare, should say, to a Riri Williams legacy characters. Those legacy characters are pumped so heavily that it gets people going, huh, never thought about that. So within comics that people like to say are woke, it's simply diversity. Comics has always been diverse. During the wars, Superman and Batman always fought the evil side. They always fought Mussolini. They always fought the Nazis. They always fought the Germans, and they always fought the Klan. That is the running theme of American comics. They always fight the Klan. The Klan gets stronger. They have their leader, like we got one now, and it always takes the group of oppressed to stand up, get stronger, and fight back. Whether it's Superman fighting the Klan, as I mentioned, whether it's the war covers of Superman and Batman, whether it's Captain America punching out the Nazis, or whether it's Captain America and Superman punching out the Japanese during the war. Comics have always been on the right side of history. Why do we think that's going to change right now? Comics are on the right side of history. Always. When you see characters from the LGBTQAI plus community, because they're on the right side of history. Because we go back to another unwritten rule. Don't ever talk about them. They haven't earned, nor do they deserve equal rights. Comics have always been on the right side of history because people are going to go back in history and read that periodical. And they're going to say, they got it right. Or they're going to say, they got it horribly wrong. And we're going to look at this history, and everybody that's on the side of no representation and DEI is giving more rights to African American people, and HBCUs are racist because it's only for Black people. We're going to look back and go, these were some absolutely buffoon people and their followers. And they followed right into the Bay Area, right there off the Golden Gate Bridge behind me. Right into the Bay, without even thinking. You are on the right side of history when you know that DEI actually stands for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And you understand that for, 250 years, minorities, starting at the top of African Americans, have not been given the equity and the inclusion as the Constitution says. And it gets played out through comics. And every time a comic book does it, Let me be clear, not every time, because there is a Captain Confederate and all those other things. In mainstream, when that comic book tells that story, they usually tell it right. And that's what people are afraid of, the story being told accurately as for accurately. That's what people are afraid of. I learned from a gentleman, professor, Dr. Shiraki Holly out in Southern California. I learned from him that in order for me to learn a people, in order for me to know about a people, I need to learn what they do. I need to watch their movies and listen to their music and taste their food and read their stories, participate in some of their events. That's how you really get down to understanding a people. But if we were forced to hide, if we were forced to push that to the closet, if we were forced to never be allowed to see those things, our life wouldn't be whole. We wouldn't even be Americans, right? We wouldn't be Americans. Because America says, I want my freedom, not tyranny from a king. And that has also played out through comics. It's played out through comics. So what can we do? That's our next question. So I would say, because I also am the dollar bin champ, I would say, here's a few things you can do. One, there are a lot of titles and series that have already ended that are scattered around comic book convention floors and in back issue bins of comic books, and they will eventually have a sale. Scour them, build a great collection of Black titles, but also build a collection of titles and characters that you just like. Build your collection to where you have something to read, to where you won't have to worry about whether you should be buying DC books or not, or I should say new DC books, because we're still buying DC books just in the back issue bin. That's still going to happen. That's not going to change anything, right? Those books have already been ordered and paid for. They're talking about moving forward. So if you are, or even if you aren't, I'll be totally honest with you, dive into your back issue bins. Collect series that you might not have thought about. And at the end of this video, I'm actually going to have a montage of some amazing independent comic book titles that you can get, but also some other titles that you can get from DC, from Marvel. And again, I'm a DC person. I'm down with DC. But does that mean I want them to continue to not have a title? Nope. But what it also means is I'm not waiting on them to do it. I'm going to go right to Independence Press and Artist Alley, and I'm going to buy what people already there are making. And keep your eye out, because my book is also in the works as well. Little nod there. I'm not going to say too much. When your money goes from point A and it circumvents that, people start paying attention. Joe Ilyich already showed us how we could do that with the new history of the DC universe. So the money, the buying power, and the support is there. Buy up all the Black comic book issues you can. Build the complete runs that you can. Pass them on to the next generations in your family. People will pay attention. And if you want to continue to buy DC, listen, don't get me wrong. Absolute Batman, I know, is the hottest thing smoking. I get it. Absolute Superman, which had a cameo of Absolute Steel, which kind of went under the radar, right? Those books are there. Go to your back issue bins. Dive into them. There's a lot of great stuff there. Spend your money on those independent, small press, indie Black comic book creators and women creators. The stories are amazing. Give them feedback. Don't just take anything. Give them feedback. We're not buying just to buy. We want to buy quality. And if it's just not quality, don't spend your money on it. That should be pretty self-explanatory. So I'm going to pause. I'm going to end this because I want to thank you all so much for spending this time with me. I hope you understand my words. If not, please put any and all comments down in the comment section. Also, you can hit me up at Comic Book Hit List at yahoo.com, Comic Book Hit List at IG, and of course, right here on YouTube, Comic Book Hit List. Put it in the comments and I will answer every single one of them. Let's have a roundtable discussion. Let's do that. So I want to thank you again for taking this time to join me. letting me get this off my chest, letting me have this conversation with you. I hope you've learned something. One of the things that I want to leave you with is, at any time you have a question about history, please take some time to go to PBS and go to the History Channel and look at what they say. That is usually a great marker of accurate history telling. The more you learn, the more you know. And the big thing that you have to do, and this is a really hard thing for humans, and I want you to do it because I've been working on doing this and I've been doing this. When you realize that what you've been thinking is wrong, change it and then spread the word. That's how we get better. That's how we get smarter. That's how we build a better society within comic books and in real life. Thank you again. I appreciate it. And this is your boy, Cool Ty.
All the stupid jokes and your showbiz crime. Ram the file down your throat as I spit my rhyme. Battle me and I'ma show you the evil of your ways. Hootie hoo, go in, truly. Feel me, feel me. Yeah. I'm just a homegrown boy from the streets of Daytona. I'm about to stank it up, ride like the smell of ammonia. Pump your fist like this. If you don't care, I represent for myself and everybody everywhere. And if you represent y'all, hold it up, y'all. Hold it up. Here I come, here I come. So show some love. Pump your fist like this and show some love. Be good to them good girls. But is she a scandalous crow? You gotta get going. It ain't hard to put it down. Collaborate with your soul. Cross the wrong line of my life, crushed by a totem pole. Got no time for petty squabbles over who got juice. Look at you, all wound up, panties tight in your cooch. Tell me, how can this guy from the DBC be so tight and so right? And if I had one wish, I wish to flow like this. So tight and so right. You might say it's a conceit that keep me flipping, but for real, it's a gift, and I ain't tripping, cause I only got one life of making it happen, and it's that cool Tyrone that keep y'all clapping. I'm just a homegrown boy from the streets of Daytona. I'm about to stank it up, ride like the smell of ammonia. Pump your fist like this. If you don't care, I represent for myself and everybody everywhere. I'm just a homegrown boy from the streets of Daytona. I'm about to stank it up, ride like the smell of ammonia. Pump your fist like this. If you don't care, I represent for myself and everybody everywhere. Come on, put your hands up, rock with Ty, y'all. It's the wild man in me that keeps me locked and loaded, but the intellect in me that keeps me grounded and quoted for saying, God is good and I love all people. Trying to be the king of crumpet, my head from being smoted. I should strive to be your ace down south, let the water take X plus 3 and pi r squared. Add circumference of 12 minus 72. Good Lord, man. Woo, man. Go